Welcome to this brief presentation prepared for you by Lakewood Ranch CERT. This is a shortened version of the information session that we would normally run, but we wanted to provide you with an opportunity to review some of the key information points regarding hurricane risks and preparing for them. We also want to touch upon the current pandemic situation and how that could factor into your planning for hurricanes. Since the pandemic concerns are far from resolved, please take information we provide later in the presentation as a guideline and review the most current information at sites such as mymanatee.org or floridadisaster.org for the most up-to-date material. In this video, we'll talk about the most important decisions you'll need to make, provide you with information about considerations for the evacuate or stay decision you have to make, information regarding your pets if you have them, key planning considerations, and information about Manatee County preparedness. Also an overview of the pandemic considerations and a summary and some key information sources for you to look at. We'll aim to provide some links below this video for you to get easy access. We hope that you find this useful in your planning and preparation. So let's start. Hurricane preparedness begins with the most important decision. Do we stay or do we leave? This decision is generally based upon the severity of the storm and your personal circumstances. Category 1 and Category 2 hurricanes are serious storms, but probably you can shelter in place. A Category 3 storm is a major storm and may test the limits of the infrastructure. A Category 4 storm is very powerful and it's probably time to leave. A Category 5 storm is destructive and there may not be anything left of your property when you come back. If you decide to evacuate, the questions on when to leave, where to go, and what to do before leaving come up. Waiting too long to leave results in heavy traffic and limited options for air travel. When leaving, only two directions are possible. West and south are not possibilities. And when going north on I-75, Tampa traffic and beyond Tampa traffic will definitely slow progress. When heading east on I-4 or on State Route 70, one might encounter traffic possibly even coming from the east coast evacuating west. It's important that you notify somebody that you're leaving and also have a plan B. If traffic is stopped by accidents going north, you need to try and plan for an alternative escape route. You'll also need to monitor the storm path, as it may end up tracking even along your escape route. A hurricane watch will be issued 48 hours prior to the predicted impact of the storm. This means that conditions are favorable for a storm and that we should be preparing by obtaining final supplies of food, water and fuel. Preparation also includes hardening of the structures by installing any final shutters, removing outdoor items, and anything else which could become airborne and cause damage. A hurricane warning will be issued 36 hours prior to the predicted impact of the storm, and it means that the storm is imminent. It's now time to evacuate low-lying areas and to complete securing your home. Waiting too long to leave may result in very slow traffic and a lack of services. Fuel may be in short supply, and since Florida does not reverse traffic patterns, the interstates will offer no increased capacity. If one is leaving, the recommendation is to leave 5 days ahead of the storm in order to experience more normal traffic and service conditions. Leave early in the day and with a full tank of fuel. Keep in mind that in Hurricane Irma, 6.6 million people out of a 20 million population evacuated their homes in Florida to either shelters or an alternative location, so you should expect traffic to be busy. It's very important to have confirmed reservations before you leave. Hotels may either have no vacancies or not be operational due to staffing restrictions. After all, no one plans on riding out a storm in an automobile at a roadside rest. Due to the lack of services, when leaving, you've got to plan on being self-supporting. So in addition to having food, water, medications and clothing, it's critical to have some cash. In the event of a power outage, there could be a lack of an available credit and debit system. Important documents, especially dealing with homeowners insurance, should be brought with you. Road maps are a necessity in all likelihood if you end up having to leave the interstate and navigate rural Florida. While 5 days prior to the predicted arrival of the storm is the recommended time to evacuate, as you can see from this chart, the accuracy of storm prediction at this point is only approximately 20%. No one knew exactly where Hurricane Irma was going to end up running. Before leaving, make sure that you secure your house and notify somebody that you are leaving and intending to evacuate. The worst case you could face is that if the storm does change direction, you might just have had an unplanned vacation. So if the decision is to stay, the options that you have are either to shelter in place in your property or to arrange to go to a shelter. If you're going to shelter in place, you need to ask yourself, is my home safe? And do I have provisions of food and water for a week without any normal services? If you're planning on going to a shelter, where do you plan to go? When will you go? And what do you need to take with you? And if you've got a pet, what preparations need to be made for them? And where would you find a pet-friendly shelter? You also need a plan B. So it could be that you were planning on sheltering at home, but now the storm is turning much worse and stronger, and now you need to go to a shelter or make some other provisions. So let's watch a short video on hurricane categories from the Weather Channel. This may help you decide whether you plan to shelter or whether you plan to evacuate when you understand the different categories of storm and the damage that they could cause.
When it comes to hurricanes, each one's impacts are a little bit different, but the wind speeds that we talk about along the Saffir-Simpson scale, those are very specific, and the damage caused in those categories, kind of predictable. So let me show you. Let's start off with a Category 1 storm. And the damage here, not too bad. A couple of shingles fall off, you can have some palm fronds bending in the wind, but everything basically remains intact. Category 2, that's where you really start to feel it. Look at the windows of the house. They can be hit from debris from the outside and already start breaking in a Category 2. Your trees are significantly bent over in the wind, and the siding of the house itself can break, flapping there in the wind, adding to those eerie noises inside. Category 3. I've heard only a Category 3, but it's not only anything except really bad news. In a Category 3, you can have the door of the house blown in because the winds get so strong. You can have the roof of the house start to flap up and down in the wind because it can lift off those weak points, and a lot of those trees start to fall. Category 4, the damage is even worse. You get most trees falling, most of your windows breaking, most of your shingles fly away, and then Cat 5 is as high as the category scale goes. By Cat 5, no shingles remain anywhere nearby. The holes in the roof get so big that the walls of the house start to fall because they're not attached to anything anymore. There won't be any trees up in the neighborhood. That's just catastrophic damage. But again, that's just from the wind, and there are other impacts from hurricanes, and they all vary through the season. So stick with the Weather Channel to keep you safe when the tropics head towards your neck of the woods.
Now that we've seen the type of damage that you could expect during a hurricane, let's understand something about Manatee County. So Manatee County building codes have become more stringent based upon storm history. If your home was built prior to 2002, the structural design basis was for a force of 110 mile-an-hour winds at the coast and down to 90 mile-an-hour winds in the eastern parts of the county. Between 2000 and 2012, the design basis was for wind loads of 130 miles per hour, and present code after March 2012 requires the design of the structure for wind loads of 150 miles an hour. Based on the Saffir-Simpson hurricane wind scale, if your house is designed for 90 mile-an-hour winds, that would be a Category 1 storm. 110 would be a Category 2 storm. At 130 miles an hour, the structure would be at the bottom end of a Category 4 storm, and finally at 150 miles an hour at the upper end of a Category 4 storm. The important thing to remember is that the design is based on wind loads, but unless your windows are impact-resistant hurricane-style windows, they are not designed for flying projectiles at more than 100 miles an hour. It's important to think of your house as a bubble, and in securing your home, you need to preserve the integrity of that bubble to prevent the hurricane winds from entering the house. The weakest points on the house are the windows and the doors. Non-impact resistant windows need to be protected by metal, Kevlar or other types of shutters, and the door must be secured. Double residential doors especially must be secured to prevent them failing open during the storm. Garage doors should also be secured at a minimum with a security bolt attached to the door. During the storm, the first responders, when winds are very high, will not be permitted to deploy for their own safety. And after the storm, police, fire, emergency medical and 911 services may be down, impacted, or deployed to the most affected areas. Therefore, it could be some time before your call for help is responded to. Following the storm, in the absence of the traditional first responders, the local community emergency response team can go into action. These are teams of your neighbours who are trained in first aid and light search and rescue. Each member is also equipped with a two-way radio, which can allow communication with ham operating hubs who will be in contact with the Emergency Operations Centre in the event of telephone and cell phone infrastructure failures. How prepared are you? Look at these questions and ask yourself how you might mitigate against any of those events. And if you're sheltering at home, are you prepared with food and water and medications for a week? In the event of a power outage, it could be that on a small scale you might be without lights or air conditioning and refrigeration, and on a larger scale, drinkable water supplies may not be available because of the pumps not working, and also pump stations handling wastewater would also be impacted and non-functional. If you have a portable generator available and you decide to use it, make sure you locate it outside, not inside a garage, not inside the property. It must be well ventilated, and you should only be connecting it to the appliance or appliances that you want to power off it. A portable generator should not be connected to backfeed into the house circuits, since there's no transfer switch to isolate the generated power from the grid. You therefore have the potential of electrifying repair technicians who could be working on the system. A Red Cross or similar shelter is set up after a storm, and it's a formal facility with trained staff, cots, food, water and other supplies. This is not a storm shelter. In Manatee County, a storm shelter is usually a school building or other type of government building, described better as a lifeboat and not a cruise ship. The projected capacity in Manatee County shelters was 35,000 for a population currently exceeding 400,000. However, with the recent pandemic and the requirement of social distancing, that capacity could be further reduced by 50 or 60%. To prevent the spread of the virus, temperatures will probably be measured prior to entry to a shelter, tested during your time there, and this will greatly increase the time also to enter the shelter. While sick people will not be turned away, sequestering away from the general population is going to be required. Due to reduced capacities, shelters may well be restricted to people evacuated from high-risk areas, such as those in trailers or manufactured homes and in low-lying areas. So if you're planning on a shelter, investigate this and make your plans early. In addition to the storm shelter, the evacuation shelter, and the Red Cross shelters, Manatee County has special needs shelters. These are generator-equipped facilities that can provide for medical needs. You've got to be pre-registered, however, prior to entry. So please make sure that you do that in advance of the storm threat. And in fact, you can do this today if you believe that you may need the additional assistance. Look for a link below this video to enable you to register. Due to the lack of services in a storm or evacuation shelter, you've got to be prepared to be self-sustaining. You need a go bag for the shelter, and it needs to include food and water and medication, in addition to clothing and some form of bedding. There could be a curfew if the storm is very bad, and you wouldn't be able to leave the shelter until the curfew is lifted, so make sure you're prepared. It's also very important to have your critical papers and some cash for after the storm. It may be necessary to have proof of residency in order to get back into your neighborhood if storm damage has been severe. It's important after the storm so that your family or other contact folks know that you're safe and well. Here's a site, safeandwell.org, that can help you to do that. Or else make sure that you give them a call. They're likely to be worried and would want to hear from you. Checklists are very important to detail what needs to be done at various points in time. At 365 days or even weeks before the formal storm season, June 1st to November the 30th, it's already time to harden the house and to mitigate any potential problems. So trim any trees that could impact the structure, make repairs to the roof, the gutters and downspouts. Ensure that there's enough drainage around the house. Prior to the storm season, plan on stocking the pantry with canned goods, increasing the supplies of bottled water, and make sure, of course, that you've got some cash at home. 5 days out is kind of the time to secure your home, notify neighbors, and leave if you've decided to do that. If you decide to stay, 72 hours before the storm, it's really time to complete securing any supplies of food, water, medications, any cash, and fuel. Install any shutters if you have them. Remove any furniture from the lanai or any loose objects around the house. If you have a pool and it doesn't have an automatic overflow, you may want to consider lowering the water levels. And if you've got them available, add sandbags to any potential water entry points around the house, just in case there's any overflow. Pets need to be thought about too in advance of the storm, so ensure your planning includes any information that you may require about them too. Shelters, if they accommodate pets, will need records to ensure that vaccination are current, and have several pictures of you and your pet, ideally together even, for identification. Make sure you have other means of identification for your pet, such as a collar and tag, or ideally microchip, so that should they become separated from you, you have a way of being reunited with them after the storm. So while we're focusing on hurricanes, emergencies can happen at any time. So in addition to hurricanes, Florida is also impacted by strong thunderstorms and tornadoes and flash floods. So make sure you have a family emergency plan, and don't forget to include those pets. You don't have to start with a blank piece of paper. A family emergency plan can be downloaded from FEMA and you can fill it out, and it provides an easy format for items that you may need to consider. A link for this download will be provided underneath this video. Even though we're living in paradise, life in Florida involves year-round preparation. Stock up, rotate your stock of goods, build up some cash, assume that ATMs won't be available, harden the house, and mitigate any possible problems that could occur in bad weather, and update go bags and have your plans made. So how prepared are you? Let's take a look at this short video, a prime example of a way not to do it.
All right, I know this isn't any fun to talk about, but we should. Okay, so who's gonna do what?
I'll pack the dead batteries.
Great.
I'll only put what I don't need into a duffel bag.
Perfect. That's totally unhelpful.
No problem.
Meanwhile, I will try to comfort everyone by speaking in a calm voice.
And I'll try to get the generator going without any gas.
Oh, let's not forget the cell phones, which probably won't work.
Right.
And who is going to handle supplies?
I can forget to do a list for us.
Thanks, pal.
Well, I think we couldn't be any less prepared. I'm proud of you guys.
Talk to your kids about who to call, where to meet, what to pack. Visit ready.gov/kids for tips and information.
So what have you done to prepare? Are you well organized? Have you had the conversations with your family? And critically, have you made the stay or evacuate decision? This hurricane season could be further compounded by the issues associated with the pandemic. Let's have a look here at Manatee County, a short video from them in terms of hurricane preparation.
June 1st opens up hurricane season. We had our annual media day where we reach out to our media partners to get the same message out to the public. The new initiative is Know Your Home, meaning what construction strength is your home, knowing when or when not to evacuate. Putting your kit together is very important. We're now recommending 7 days worth of supplies rather than 3 to 5 as we did in the past. Knowing that a shelter is a last resort. A shelter is a lifeboat, not a cruise ship. Don't get complacent looking at maybe we're going to have a slower hurricane season. That doesn't matter. It only takes one storm. Put your plans together now. Put your kits together now. Now is the time to be prepared.
For more information on how you can prepare today, visit mymanatee.org/manateeready.
So not only do we have hurricanes to worry about, but also we have the pandemic. So what type of implications do we think could exist based upon the information that we've seen available? So clearly limited supplies in terms of restocking pantries, so it should be done as early as possible. Social distancing requirements, both in shelters and in public general. Shelter options could be changed, again, due to social distancing and staff availability. You could have fewer kind of leave options, as there may be less flights and more people trying to leave on the roads than you anticipate. So you may want to plan early. There could be specific government requests requiring you to shelter in place rather than being able to take advantage of shelters. So again, if you've got special needs, please consider registering that fact as quickly and as urgently as possible. Undoubtedly, there's an emotional toll that you can anticipate associated with the hurricane, with the pandemic layer on top. Please take care of yourself. And you should expect, just in general, that there could be reduced help after the storm in terms of trying to manage all of the priorities associated with the storm and with the coronavirus. So if we look at shelters specifically, here's some of the information that we've seen that we want to share. Shelter-in-place directives may be issued, which is going to limit shelter availability. And alternatives to shelters, such as hotels and dormitories, could be considered. Regular monitoring on entry and daily checking to make sure that if anybody is infected or showing signs that they are picked up and dealt with appropriately. And there could be separate areas that are specifically for those infected with the COVID-19 virus. Face coverings, absolutely anticipate that to be the case at all times. And you may be asked to self-quarantine after leaving shelters, just in case you've come in contact with somebody that has the disease. Testing should also be conducted by yourselves post being in the shelter, if it's available and you're able to do that. Well, on behalf of Lakewood Ranch CERT, we hope that this has been useful. We focus on the decisions that you need to think about, the impact hurricanes can have, and the implications that you may need to consider regarding the pandemic. Please review the additional sources that we've listed below this video for you. If you send questions into our email, we'll do our best to answer them, but also please do try and attend one of our in-person sessions when we're able to operate them, as this is a great forum to ask questions as well as hear questions and get the answers that perhaps you may not have thought about. If this was helpful, please hit the like button, send us some comments, and feel free to refer this video to family and friends. Thank you very much.